So in this problem, we have four graphs and four equations, and we're going to figure out which graph goes with which equation. So let's take a look. Now, here's our graphs, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and our equations are down here, A, B, C, and D. Okay, now first of all, I want you to notice that some of these exponential functions are above the x-axis, and some of them are below the x-axis. Now these graphs that are below, we've obtained them by reflecting them over the x-axis. So you can imagine that numbers 3 and 2, we got them by taking the green graphs and reflecting them over the x-axis. Now, how do you end up with a reflection? You end up with a reflection when you have a negative sign in front of the equation. So we know that 3 and 2 go with B and D. So we just have to figure out which one is which. Now let's come to that in just a second. Let's go back to the other two. In other words, let's look at 1 and 4. We know that 1 and 4 go with A and C. The question is which one is which. Now, f of x is 2 to the x for A. So f of x equals 2 to the x is A. We know that graphs of the form something like this, like a number bigger than 1 to the x, they have a general shape where they go kind of like up from left to right. And then graphs of the form like a number smaller than 1 to the x, they go the other way, so kind of like number 4. So I can actually see here that this one right here is actually f of x equals 2 to the x because of the direction that the graph is curving up in. It's curving up to the right. So I know that this one right here is A. Now that tells me that f of x equals 1/3 of the x has to be number 4 because it's kind of like it's going down as you move from left to right. It's a decreasing function. So this has to be C based on the way that they're kind of like going as you move left to right. Okay, now let's take a look back at 3 and 2. 2 we've obtained from a function going up from left to right, reflecting it over the x-axis. So we know that the 2 to the x function is going up as you move left from right, and if you reflect it over the x-axis, you get negative 2 to the x. So this means that number 2 is B. Now, by process of elimination, that leaves number 3 as D. Now, there's one other thing we didn't look at in this picture, and that is we didn't look at some specific points. So let's take a look really quickly at graph 1. So it goes through 0, 1, but you can also see that it goes through 1, 2. Let's compare that to graph C. Graph C goes through 0, 1 right here, and it goes through -1, 3. And so you can double check that you've selected the right graphs by just making sure that when you plug in 1 into equation A, you get 2 out, which you would because 2 to the 1 is 2. And then, so you can like look at where some of these points are and like plug them into the equations and just to like verify that you've made the right selection. So if you check for graph C right here, or equation C, if you plug in -1, you in fact do get 3 out. So you can do this for more points on each graph just to double check that you've correctly selected them.